The laughter rang out like silverware clinking against fine porcelain, sharp and cutting. The chandelier above the dinner table glittered over the faces of Abuja's elite, bank executives, real estate magnates, and polished socialites. But in the middle of it all, Amara sat stiffly, her wineglass trembling slightly in her hand. Kenneth's voice boomed over the conversation, commanding the room's attention as always. Tall, charismatic, and dressed in a custom tuxedo that hugged his broad shoulders, he was every bit the successful businessman the world adored. But beneath the charm, he was also a man who liked to mock what he couldn't control. "I swear, guys," Kenneth said between bites of grilled steak, "Amara can clear a whole pot of yam porridge faster than any houseboy I've hired. I mean, I told her just last week that she's beginning to look like she's expecting triplets." He laughed, loud and carefree, nodding at his friends for approval. There was a pause. Then some of them chuckled awkwardly. Amara felt the room close in. Her cheeks flushed, her chest tightened, but she forced a smile. She had become good at pretending, good at swallowing her pain like pills, bitter but necessary. Kenneth wasn't done. He turned toward her, grinning like it was all harmless fun. "Babe, tell them, nah. Didn't I say you eat like a construction worker on site?" A few more laughs, this time bolder. Even the women giggled, pretending not to look uncomfortable. Amara's eyes met that of Bola, a longtime friend, who quickly looked away. Another friend gave her a pitying glance, but no one said anything. No one ever did. Because Kenneth was rich, powerful, and charming. Because Amara was lucky to have him. She chuckled lightly, careful not to let her voice crack. "Well, maybe that's why your houseboy's job is secure," she said, trying to play along. Kenneth raised his glass. "To my beautiful, well-fed wife." And they toasted. But in Amara's mind, the glass didn't clink, it shattered. The guests left around midnight. The house was filled with the scent of leftover roasted turkey and red wine, and faint music still played in the background. Kenneth poured himself a nightcap, whistling as he walked into the living room. "You didn't think I was serious, did you?" he said casually, flopping onto the cream leather couch. "Come on, babe, it was just banter." Amara stood in the hallway, still wearing the sleeveless satin dress she had chosen so carefully that evening. She had spent hours getting ready. Hair pinned perfectly, light makeup, the necklace Kenneth had bought her 2 anniversaries ago. She had even fasted the day before, afraid of how the dress would fit. Banter, that's what he called it. "I'm going to bed," she said, her voice quiet. He waved her off. "Don't be dramatic. You looked stunning tonight, really. Just maybe cut down on the gari during lunch, yeah?" She turned away before he could see the tears forming. In their bedroom, Amara stood in front of the mirror, the light from the side lamp casting soft shadows across her face. She slowly removed her earrings, one after the other, and placed them on the dressing table. She stared at her reflection for a long time. She wasn't perfect. Her body had changed since they married 8 years ago. A little fuller, yes, a little softer. But she was still beautiful. She still had her glow, though it had dimmed under Kenneth's constant ridicule. A memory flickered, the first time he called her chubby. It was 3 years ago, after a vacation. Then it was soft. Then overfed. Over time, those comments had burrowed into her skin like thorns. Tonight, they pierced all the way in. She touched her belly lightly, remembering how she once dreamed of carrying their child, how he said they weren't ready, how he said she needed to shed a few first. And now he mocked the very thing he had denied her. A single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Instead, she whispered, "You will regret this." For 3 days after the dinner party, Amara said nothing. She moved through the house like a ghost, neither bitter nor aggressive, just silent. Kenneth barely noticed. He had already returned to his daily routine of business calls, loud laughs, and bragging about new properties in Lekki Phase 1 and Banana Island. But something had shifted. On the 4th morning, Amara rose before dawn. The streets of Abuja were still dim as she tied her sneakers, grabbed a bottle of water, and quietly left the house. The guards at the gate watched her, confused. Madam had never left this early before. She walked briskly down the road, through the quiet of my Thomas tree-lined streets, until she reached Jobby Lake Park. The sun had barely kissed the sky when she began to run. Her breath was heavy at first, uneven and ragged, but she kept going, one step, then another. Not for the weight, not for Kenneth, for control, for healing. That morning became a ritual. Every day at 5:30 a.m., Amara laced up and ran. Within 3 weeks, her body began to change, not drastically, but noticeably. She felt stronger. Her cheeks, once tired and pale, began to glow again. She added yoga at a quiet studio in Wusei too. Then she changed her diet, not to become slimmer, but to feel alive. Colorful fruits, fresh vegetables, and herbal teas replaced the late-night snacks Kenneth insisted they share in front of the TV. He noticed. "You're glowing these days," he said one evening, eyeing her as she passed him in the living room. "Trying to impress someone?" Amara smiled, but said nothing. He laughed, but uneasily. 2 months later, Amara started a private Instagram page. She posted a photo of her running shoes with the caption, "Day 1. Healing starts with one step." To her surprise, the post blew up. Women across the country messaged her, asking questions about wellness, heartbreak, and reclaiming confidence. She started sharing daily routines, smoothie recipes, motivational quotes, and honest stories, without ever mentioning Kenneth. By month 3, she had over 60,000 followers. She registered a business, Grace and Grit Wellness Company. She began offering coaching, hosting private wellness brunches, and partnering with small local farms to promote healthy living. Her face appeared on radio interviews, her words were quoted in magazines, and she was invited to speak at a women's event in Lagos. Kenneth's reaction was swift and ugly. "What is all this?" he asked one morning, holding a flyer for one of her wellness workshops. "Is this your new hobby now? Publicly pretending like your marriage is fine while secretly trying to be a celebrity?" Amara took the flyer from him gently. "It's not about pretending, it's about becoming." He scoffed. "Just don't embarrass me, Amara. People know you're my wife." She tilted her head. "Yes, they do. And they also know I have a voice." That was the first time Kenneth didn't have a response. A week later, Amara was getting ready for an evening brunch collaboration with a fashion brand when she opened Kenneth's laptop by mistake. He had left it on the dining table. Her intention was innocent. She wanted to print her speech notes. What she saw instead stopped her cold. A string of emails between Kenneth and his assistant, Tanya. Intimate, inappropriate, shameless. Photos, messages from hotel check-ins. One message read, "You're the only one who makes me feel alive. She's just a shadow." For a moment, Amara stared at the screen without breathing. But she didn't cry. She didn't confront him. She simply closed the laptop, picked up her handbag, and walked out the door in silence. Her next few social media posts carried a different kind of energy. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. You don't have to expose the snake, just remove the venom. Revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it smiles. Her followers loved it. What they didn't know was that every word came from a place of deep pain and dark resolve. Exactly 3 months after Kenneth humiliated her, Amara hosted her own private dinner at an upscale rooftop restaurant in Abuja. This time, she was the center of attention. The theme was Grace After Fire. Everyone was there: media influencers, health professionals, celebrities, even a few silent admirers from the diplomatic corps. Amara wore a slim-fitting red gown that hugged her new body with elegant strength. Her natural hair coiled into a soft crown. Her confidence was electric. Kenneth sat stiffly at the edge of the event, watching as his wife floated through the room like a queen. People toasted to her courage, her grace, her brilliance. He raised his glass mechanically, the smile on his face tight and bitter. Later that night, in the car, he asked coldly, "So this is what you've become now?" Amara looked out the window, the wind playing with the loose strands of her hair. "No," she said softly, "this is who I've always been. You just never saw it." Kenneth's world was quietly falling apart, but he was too proud to admit it. His business was slowing, contracts were delayed, some of his investors had started pulling out. One major deal in Ikoyi had collapsed overnight. And through it all, Amara soared. Grace and Grit had become a full wellness brand with over 200,000 followers, a product line in development, and partnerships with women-focused NGOs. People no longer introduced her as Kenneth's wife. Now, Kenneth was Amara's husband. The shift bruised his ego more than he could bear. In private, he called her arrogant. In public, he pretended to support her. But the truth gnawed at him. He began making desperate moves behind her back, using one of his company accounts to spread false rumors online that Amara's products were unlicensed and her brand unethical. Anonymous posts claimed her detox kits were dangerous. But Amara had learned to anticipate him. She traced the account to his business laptop and hired a lawyer to quietly shut it down. Still, she said nothing to him. Silence remained her greatest weapon. Their 7th wedding anniversary approached in early July. Kenneth, seeing his image slipping, suggested they do something special. "I booked us a private dinner at home," he said one evening, flashing his signature smile. "Just us, like the old days." Amara agreed. She didn't ask what changed. She didn't mention the lies, the sabotage, or the woman he still texted when he thought she wasn't looking. Instead, she cooked. It had been a long time since she entered the kitchen for Kenneth. She made his favorite, smoky jollof rice with grilled turkey, spicy pepper sauce, and a side of fried plantains. For dessert, a small bowl of homemade coconut pudding. She poured him a glass of fruit wine, sweet, chilled, and smooth. Kenneth ate heartily. "Wow, this tastes like the Amara I married." She smiled. "Happy anniversary." They clinked glasses. An hour later, Kenneth collapsed in the upstairs hallway. At the hospital, the doctors were baffled. Kenneth was paralyzed from the waist down. His blood pressure had crashed dangerously low, and scans revealed damage to parts of his nervous system. But there was no clear cause. No stroke, no trauma, no illness. Just sudden, inexplicable deterioration. He could move his eyes, he could speak, but he could no longer walk, no longer feed himself, no longer live unassisted. Amara visited the hospital the next day, calm and composed in a white blouse and jeans. Kenneth lay in bed, wires attached to his chest, his once broad shoulders now limp. "Isn't this dramatic?" she said softly, sitting beside him. He blinked at her. What happened to me?" She leaned closer. "You always said I was dramatic," she whispered. "But this isn't drama, Kenneth. This is justice." His eyes widened, his lips trembled. "I never needed to shout," she continued. "I just needed you to feel what it's like to be trapped, humiliated, helpless, and alone." "You poisoned me," he croaked. "No, I reminded you that choices have consequences." Tears pooled in his eyes. "Please, Amara." "You mocked my body. You called me fat in front of strangers. You cheated, belittled me, and tried to destroy everything I built." She stood. "Now you have all the time in the world to think, and no legs to run from it." Before she left, she leaned in once more, her voice barely a breath. "You're still alive, Kenneth, but now you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you weren't." Months passed. Amora never returned to the hospital, but she paid for a private caregiver and ensured Kenneth was kept in a quiet, modest home with everything he needed, except company. His mistress vanished the moment the paralysis was confirmed. His friends stopped calling. His name slowly disappeared from Abuja's business circuit. Meanwhile, Amara flourished. She launched the Grace After Fire Foundation, helping women heal from emotional and psychological abuse. She toured cities, gave TED Talks, and appeared in front-page features about strength and resilience. One cloudy morning, as her driver opened the door for her at a women's conference in Lagos, a reporter called out, "Amara, any message to your husband?" She smiled for the cameras. "Only this," she said. "Kindness is a gift, but cruelty has a cost." And with that, she turned gracefully and walked away, the image of a woman who had risen from ashes but never looked back at the fire.